you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being patient. This is a conversation that ANT invites different media practitioners to be able to have a discussion with the leadership in the Alliance for National Transformation. Today, we are having a discussion with Honorable Paul Mwiru there, and we'll be discussing a range of topics. I ask that you will ask as many people as possible to come and be part of this as much as we can there. But let's pray so that we can get started. Lord, we thank you for today and we bless you. We pray that even as we're having this conversation, you'll give us wisdom, understanding, but most of all, Lord, may we ask pertinent questions on how we can move our country to have a better country there. So we thank you and we bless you in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'm still thank the people that are on Twitter Spaces there. I see Joan, I see Samson, Chiza, I see Ivan there. Thank you for coming through. Osika, I see you there. Thank you for coming through. And then I have Honorable Paul Mwiru here. Both on different platforms. We are streaming live on Twitter Spaces. We're also streaming live on Zoom there, and we have people that we're discussing with there. We also have this video. It will be put on our Twitter Spaces, Alliance for National Transformation, in the future here, but also we'll be streaming in different platforms there. So let's get this conversation started, and thank you for joining. Good evening, Honorable Paul Mwiru, and we are grateful that you're spending this hour between 5 and 6 with you to discuss very pertinent issues. Good evening, sir, and how are you? Honorable, you're muted on both platforms. I'll kindly request that you unmute on Twitter Spaces and also on Zoom.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, listeners and viewers.
Thank you very much. Honorable, if you could also unmute on Twitter Spaces there, I would really be grateful. I see it there. If you can unmute so that people can be able to hear from you even as we get this conversation started.
You have muted me on the Twitter.
Okay. Are you ready to unmute, Honorable, there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much. So, we will be discussing a range of topics, as I said earlier. We'll discuss the electoral petition that Honorable Mwiru put in, its appeal, the results, the implications, what does that mean? But also we'll ask ourselves, what does Alliance for National Transformation mean, especially in a season like this? We'll come to questioning the independence of the legislature there. We'll also stretch our arms further to 48.1 trillion, that's the national budget starting the 1st of July. The industrial actions there, the runaway prices, fuel is now at 6,000 shillings in some places, but also we'll switch and go regional to discuss DRC and Rwanda, and then talk about the insecurity in the last few days that has happened. Honorable, let me start with you. You put in an electoral petition there. We saw an appeal. Give us your thoughts on this and where is it going now?
Well, for starters, we participated in an electoral process, which by law was supposed to be free and fair. It so happened that we won the election, but they declared someone who did not win, in a sense that the military condoned off one polling station, actually, and interfered in the tallying process, and therefore usurping the powers of the Electoral Commission, and later allowing the Commission to connive, the officers of the Commission to connive with them, thereby subverting the will of the people. I filed the election petition in court for fairness, because I wanted the court to adjudicate on the matter. Of course, as all you must have seen, that this time around it must have been a syndicated way of failing all this judicial process. We lost at High Court. As the normal process of filing appeals is that you apply to, you give notice of appeal, which I did. You file a memorandum of appeal, and you request for the record of proceedings of court so that you are in position to file a record of appeal. I wrote to court 2 distinct letters requesting for the record of proceedings. I was informed that the trial judge, after delivering the ruling, he went with the file, court file, and therefore the record will not be prepared on time. 2 days to the end of the 30 days, which had started running from the time we filed the memorandum of appeal, was informed by court that the record now is ready. But the spirit of giving you 30 days we need to file the appeal, the record of appeal, from the date of filing the memorandum, that the appeal is properly prepared. Because it involves assembling a number of documents as per the Court of Appeal rules. I filed my record of appeal 10 days after receiving the record of appeal, which had a certificate of the registrar stating when they gave me the record. Of course, as we had been briefed, that all efforts were made to ensure that many petitions don't go through. And actually, if you look at the pattern in the court process, it has been a few petitions which have appeared, which have been handled by a particular judge or number of a panel of judges. And I want to applaud Justice Gondantende that actually all your judicial decisions, they merit being called such. And with an exception of others, which will not be circumvented. So as a result, we filed the election petition, whereas the law as is, and the way court has ruled, that the Court of Appeal rules applies to the election petition for purpose of reckoning time. The Court of Appeal in my matter said that actually the Court of Appeal rules don't apply. But just a week after, another panel of Justice Gondantende ruled that actually the Court of Appeal rules apply in as far as reckoning time, because there is no way you can file an election petition, record of appeal, where you have not been given the record by court. And even in the ruling of court, the court acknowledges that they gave me the record 2 days to the end of the time, and that it was not my fault. But of course, a lot has been said, and it can be deduced from the type of decisions which have been churned out by court, to the extent that their lordships have proved that the majority of them are alien to justice by what actually they have done. You have asked me what that one means. It means that actually there is a very big problem. We go to court not because we are interested in going to court. Like a personal, I went to court because the will of the people had been subdued, and therefore the governance issues had been affected by the crooks in the electoral commission and those who participated in the electoral process. That was the reason as to why I went there. Of course, gone are the days when the judicial officers had names attached to themselves. But the biggest problem we have today is that the judicial officers have lost the name by their conduct in handling judicial matters, that they behave like illiterate businessmen in Kampala who have no name attached to them, that you can only identify them by the type of vehicles they are driving, the big hotels they have, or the big houses they have, to the extent that our judicial officers would stop at nothing, including undermining the judicial process in order to pursue their treasure in those offices, so that they can have something they can be identified with. This is very dangerous to the security situation of the country, because where we are leading, this is a pointer to many, that people will not have to abide by the law, but they will have to devise means to deal with excesses whenever they are actually witnessed during the electoral process. That is how unfortunate the situation is, that I was robbed at gunpoint. I went to court of justice, which we call the temple of justice, and I was cheated from the temple of justice. That is how very unfortunate it is. And this did not end with me. It happened even to the mayor. For instance, I participated in the mayoral race. We had a candidate as alliance for national transformation. We lost. The NUP candidate by the name Musechi Bugudu, alias Badman, won with a margin of 800. He went to court. We gave him our tally sheets and results for all the polling stations. And this matter was dismissed on a technicality. The same applied to councillors. So I think Mr. Museveni is trying to undo whatever he was claiming to have done when he went to the bush. That is the danger. In summary, one would say that the judiciary is now. I don't think it is a place where one would wish to go to conclude the electoral process. I've been at this court. Of course, one would imagine that, you see, the other time you won, because someone was telling that you have won twice, why do you complain when you lose this one? It's not about when you lose or when you win. It is that justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. And this election had nothing to do with me as an individual. It had everything to do with our people, because about the representation of our people. So their voice was shut in the parliament, and apparently we are looking at all these 5 years without representation in parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for giving us that preamble and background to be able to understand where it's getting to. But the question I put to you is, what is the implication of this? What is the implication of these results? And are you going to take it further with another appeal to be able to see what happens there? And what does that result mean for the Alliance for National Transformation moving forward? Would you trust the electoral process in this country again?
Well, the implication is that the electoral process in Uganda is a fraud, and the court system, that option has also been closed, because the NRM system now uses that is now as a way of incapacitating its opponent, those they have cheated, because it is very risky for you to participate in an electoral process. You are cheated, then you go to a cadre court, because the results are now known, the outcome is known, which you have to find there. Because everybody would wish that your matter is heard by a sober person like Justice Egonda Antene. Because if you do a proper analysis of all decisions which you are sober and sane, almost 90% were only those petitions heard by the panel where he was. So that means that the court process, the electoral process is almost, the space is shrinking in terms of democracy. The courts are almost closed in terms of election petition. And to ANT, we are not an election party that actually we only formed that participate in elections. We knew that the matters are not easy. Even when we went to the polls, we knew they cheat, because apparently everything had been degenerating. So for us as the Alliance for National Transformation, we are on course to create a critical mass until the time when us, we are in the majority of people who think like us, so that it becomes crystal clear to everybody that a country which has no justice system is as dead. And therefore, it is the responsibility of everybody to ensure that we speak out all these ills in society as they are. Yes, sir.
Honorable, my last question on this area there. How do you hope, as the National Alliance Transformation, the Alliance for National Transformation, how do you hope to create this critical mass in all these errant judgments that you're talking about, with all these pressures that come in? Some people have gone to the corridors and said the gun is the rule of the day. How do you hope to create this critical mass if you can't even move from one district to another without being arrested?
Well, for instance, after the court process, we are waiting for the court process. As a political party, we have reached out to democracy-seeking groups. We want a team to review and do an analysis of all these court judgments, because they don't only affect the politicians, but even affect the legal profession. Because I have a number of decisions which contradict each other from the same court on the same principles of law. And we think that we cannot allow this to go down unchallenged. We think it is important that we set up a team of senior lawyers in town, and they do a review and they publish a review of all these judgments in all these cases, so the public knows what the judiciary has been doing, because they have been hiding under the fact that we respect court decisions, but we disagree, and they think they can go away scot-free. To me, they have lost it all. But how do we intend to move around to create a critical mass? Now we're on Zoom. I've not moved around. I'm in one place, and I'm very sure there are many people who are following, who are listening in this discussion. We shall use this, and we shall also use other forums to ensure that our message is very clear to the people.
So in the meantime, even as Alliance for National Transformation is trying to create this critical mass, what are you doing now as the Alliance for National Transformation? What are you doing now to be able to create that critical mass, but also moving forward? Why should Ugandans trust you?
Thank you. We have engaged in a number of trainings. We have just been having our training for our youth, which has just ended here in Kampala. I happen to have been one of the presenter. And why should Ugandan trust us? We are different because we are value-based organization. That's why, as a political organization, we have thought that we needed to do things right so that we become admirable and acceptable by everybody, even those who do wrong things thinking that they have gone into the survival mode. Because when you look at the country, people don't want to hustle. They seem to have gone into the survival mode. Many think about survival. They don't think about the country. So for us as Alliance, we are going to engage in trainings and trainings and trainings.
Okay.
We're going to make our message clear to the people. And once people understand the importance of participating in the body politic of because men are seated on they don't want to participate. They want to benefit. But I want to tell you, if you don't become part of the process to shape the future, then you won't know what you are joining. That's why at every cycle, you see people wanting to join what they have not participated into creating. Then they say, yeah, I think we're duped. We are saying instead of being duped, you need to become part of this. We build this from zero to where we want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwiru. We're having a conversation with Honorable Paul Mwiru here, and we're discussing everything current affairs. In the first segment there, we have been discussing his electoral petition, the results and the implications there. But also we have discussed what the structure of Alliance for National Transformation looks like and why people, ordinary Ugandans, should trust it. Get onto our Twitter spaces there. Drop your comments there, questions there, and we'll be able to answer them. We're going to now switch gears a bit and talk about the independence of the parliament there. And we're going to look at quite a number of things that have happened in the last few days there. So Honorable, let me get to you. You were part of the 10th and the 9th parliament there. It's interesting that this parliament has made a year so far. What is your verdict? What is your thought on what they have done? Have they delivered what Ugandans really yearn for by this parliament?
Well, to start with, we need to understand the composition of parliament and who are the players in what parliament has been doing. To start with, parliament comprises of members of parliament. It comprises the leadership of the speaker, the deputy speaker, and the parliamentary commission, and the staff. The members of parliament, as members of parliament, of course, many, having seen what has been taking place, I've seen many preoccupied with wanting to become MPs again, than performing in this term as members of parliament. A proper assessment of parliament would be based on a number of things they do. They have committees of parliament where they process some of the work they do, like Dr. General's report. 2, they have the plenary. Of course, there are many in the plenary, to the extent that not many have had a chance to contribute. But that does not mean that there are no avenues through which members can find themselves on the floor of parliament to attribute. Without having statistics on the performance of the bills they have worked on, I've seen a number of bills which have been passed through parliament. Under the law is the law, irrespective of how you perceive it. I've seen some bills passed where, in my view, parliament has not had a lot of engagement is on the budget. I have issues with parliament just the way Wananchi had issues with us when I was in the 9th and 10th parliament when it comes to the nugatory expenditure under the classified expenditure, and some sectors which need to be cut down in terms of size, including parliament itself. So I would criticize parliament on the budget part, but you cannot criticize parliament on the budget part alone without criticizing the executive which initiates the budget. The priorities of the country must be got and understood. We need to see money being pushed in the industrial sector, so that we are in position to say, because apparently this country won't develop unless we invest money in production other than the production relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for your insight, especially in the assessment there. But let's get into it and dig deeper. You talked about the bills. You talked about, the classified expenditure that really does not make sense. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. Supplementary budgets. When we look at the last ones that came in this 11th parliament, about 600 billion put aside there, 193 for members of parliament. We look at 2.4 billion spent on new cars for both the speaker and the deputy speaker. Then the luxuries of our members of parliament, busy giving themselves 40 million shillings, even with the prevailing circumstances there. What are your thoughts on this distribution, even when you called it, whatever word you use there, on how the expenditure is done? Your thoughts on this, and is it fair to the public that entrusts them with these finances to be able to appropriate them and have oversight over them?
Well, the 40 million, that is criminality. And we shouldn't waste a lot of time on it. Member of Parliament receives all his money through his account, through the Parliamentary Commission. This is not the first time when money is being given out like that to members of Parliament. It was given in the 9th. I think it is in the 10th when it was not too much, but it was too much in the 9th Parliament. The 10th, there was also on lifting the age limit. But monies of this nature, I don't think we should even have a debate. To me, it borders on the criminality, and we just need to document whoever has received this money. Because under the public, I think the Public Finance Management Act, when you put money, public money into your account becomes a public account. And therefore, the law can reach out to your account. This money would be treated as a loan to these members of Parliament and would be recovered with interest at a particular point in time when we manage. This money, when we manage to recover it, this is in my view. The 2.4 billion to buy luxury cars, I think this goes back to government policy. In public service, the the head of public service, I think and the Minister of Public Service, they must authorize purchase of each vehicle, and there is a scheme of entitlement that a staff of this stage level cannot drive a vehicle which is above certain cc engine capacity, and that goes to money. But when it comes to Parliament, everything is in the hands of the Parliamentary Commission. To me, other than jumping on, because this will continue to be done, of course, this would be called a negative expenditure, looking at the amounts of money involved. I've not had the benefit of looking at, or start looking at the procurement process. We are reading social media. Social media, you know, it has no editor. You don't know whether what they were putting across was correct or it was false. So I've not had the benefit of looking at the procurement process. But from what we are looking at the media, if that was correct, of course, it would board on fraud. But in as far as I'm concerned, it is about the policy. What's the policy on cars in the government? Does public service affect Parliament? At least I'm very sure you remember when there was an issue. I happen to have been on the committee of Parliament which investigated the former permanent secretary of OPM, Mr. Bigirimana, and the former Prime Minister. There was a saga on the issue of cars. And to my recollection, it came out clearly that there is a guideline in the government on which government official must drive which special type of car, which engine capacity, and which price. So there's someone who authorizes. So what we need to check as to who authorizes vehicles of leadership of Parliament. Is it the Parliamentary Commission? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the President? Is it government? Because if we don't deal with the main problem and we focus on the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker who are in place now, we shall miss a point. Because the next time, even if another person comes in as a Speaker, he will do the same. What I think we need to interrogate is as to whether there was a process or the Speaker and Deputy Speaker became the procurement officers in this case, which information is not within my knowledge. Because I saw on TV, I saw on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on that issue, but nobody has come out clearly to give the position. Yes, then on the 93 billion shillings, which was an enhancement of pay of members of Parliament, I think as someone who has been in Parliament, the job of members of Parliament has no tangible performance indicator, to the extent that even members of Parliament, very few know what they are supposed to do, despite the inductions they have had. That's why many have thought that by engaging the politics of economic foolery, where you are all over buying booze, doing community work, and giving out some money, can secure you the next seat in the next Parliament, which I don't agree with. The way members of Parliament are remunerated must be that which doesn't make them to look paupers, coupled with mindset change. So about their pay, my only quarrel with it is that the framers of the Constitution gave members of Parliament the power to determine their pay. That was in line with guaranteeing the independence of the legislature. But if you look at things the way they run, there is no connection between their pay and their independence as the arm of government. That's where I would have an issue. But on that note, I would say that we need to scale down the number of members of Parliament. We moved the private members bill the other time as the opposition, where we're proposing that each district should have 2 members of Parliament, the male and the female. Meaning that if you have 130 districts, those would be 260 members of parliament. So the remuneration is not a question of the way you would be when you are paying to 500 members of parliament. Because if you look at many who have been members of parliament, the state in which they are, I've seen many rushing to the president. They want the president to help them, because many of them have thought that they are going to spend all what they have earned on the population to become members of parliament again, which is untenable. So I want a transparent process where we reduce the size of members of parliament, pay them well, then also induct them so they concentrate on the role of member of parliament, other than trying to be like a local government agent in their constituencies. Because that is going to compromise them. Because even if you give them 193 billion shillings in the first year, if they continue without knowing their role as members of parliament, in the next year, they'll be seeking an enhancement, an increment as members of parliament, which is, that's why I have an issue. We need a holistic approach to the issue, because they have the power and they will always negotiate their pay with the president when the president is moving the classified expenditure. That's why if you study the looks at the classified expenditure, by the time I joined the parliament, classified expenditure was 259 billion. By the time I left the 10th parliament, classified expenditure was almost 3 trillion, which was very shocking. So these are issues which we need to deal with. And in the last year, as we approach the campaign, classified will swell, and the president will be vulnerable to accept an increment to members of parliament, because he needs their support to pass the supplementary budgets under where classified expenditure is. So this parliament, you can fault it just the way you would fault another parliament which is existed when it comes to supplementary budgets, because many of them are almost more than they are more than 50%, which distorts planning and the budgeting process. We raise this matter because even when you go to the law, it is only, you can only raise a supplementary budget after knowing the source of money. But what our parliaments are doing, they allow supplementary budgets to be raised, which are going to suppress already votes, the same budget they have appropriated. And once you do that, the budget will not perform, because the budget has parameters under which it is monitored in terms of performance. So unless Parliament gets very serious on that matter, the public won't expect anything from them when it comes to the budget. It will remain a ritual. The parameters must be very clear under which a supplementary expenditure is raised. I'll give an example to those who might be listening. When we are doing the Public Finance Management Act, under, I think, Section 13, I introduced it to the extent that as Parliament brings, or the government brings another budget, we need what we call the certificate of compliance to ensure that the budget has complied with the National Development Plan and that the expenditure in the previous budget was in line with the National Development Plan. If you look at that certificate of compliance, it is issued by National Planning Authority every year. Performance, the last time I checked, it was at 52%, meaning that 48% of the budget did not perform. That's why when you go to some entities or ministries where there are projects, the absorption capacity of money is very low. Ministry of Finance now has switched off the system. If you look at the unobserved resources, or where the Ministry of Finance has switched off the system intentionally to return the money and they fund a supplementary, you'll be wondering what Parliament is doing. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for exhausting that, because it's given us understanding, especially on the performance of the budget there. But before I get to the budget, I want to ask you one question there. There have been suggestions about a salary review board, or a board that, or a body that suggests salaries for public servants there. What's your view on that? And can it be able to perform? And where will it fall to be able to have that independence to dictate the salaries of public servants there?
Well, to me, that would make a lot of sense, but with an exception of the legislature. And I will tell you why. Because the disparities in salaries, it has made the creation of these parastatal and state bodies. To me, what I would say that I have no problem with the Salary Review Commission, but that should be with an exception of Parliament. The reason being simple, that with Parliament, the framers of the law intended that Parliament should not be controlled by any person or authority. But now when the president took away the power of Parliament to determine their emoluments, it's like a one who determines their pay, and they pay allegiance to the president because it was abused in that case. But the spirit had been that if Parliament, they set their own pay, then nobody can bulldoze them around to support any law, which is not in the best interest of our population. That was the spirit which has been abused. To when it comes to the public, the Salary Review Commission will help to address the disparities. I'll give an example. When you are a member of Parliament, and maybe you lose or you are cheated and you're out of Parliament, the way I have no salary attached to me. I've seen Mr. Museveni appointing former members of Parliament to parastatals and they say, I've appointed you, you go with your salary, which you used to earn as a member of Parliament. It is because he owns the court. But one of these days, I met one former member of Parliament who was appointed an ambassador. And his appointment letter, it has such a phrase that you are appointed, you can go with your salary and emolument which he has attached to you as a member of Parliament, where you go. So you go to a service where someone who is appointed to a certain office, he goes with his salary which he used to earn as a member of Parliament and his emolument. Very well forgetting that, for instance, a member of Parliament for Kampala receives a different pay from that of Jinja, of Kabong. So if you appoint a member of Parliament of Kabong to Parliament with his allowances, and then now you are in a certain entity, the man will earn over 50 million from Kabong, because the emoluments, they look at mileage, so it factors in a lot of money. You understand? So I've been looking this as very unfair. So I would think that Salary Review Commission would look into that account. The only challenge still with our law, you cannot vary someone whose salary to his disadvantage. So we may need an interpretation from court, but which court fears the appointing office? So it is a paradox that whatever you think about, you have to go back to court for an interpretation. Because for heaven's sake, why should a former member of Parliament who has been appointed an RDC go with his pay as RDC, as a former MOP? Yet you have an RDC who is earning 2 million. Though I don't even believe in the position of RDC. That's not a disparity. There's nothing like a salary attached to a holder and emolument. Because once you cease being a member of Parliament, you have no pay attached to you. So you cannot be appointed and you move with your salary or and the emoluments. So this to me would be a welcome idea. I have an issue with Parliament. If Parliament continues in its current form, the Salary Review Commission would apply. But if we have a vibrant Parliament, which puts people first, which is where people are not looking for money, but know why they're in Parliament, that provision should not be amended. It can only be amended when Parliament is in the current form. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. There, we're still having a conversation with Honorable Mwiru there, and we're discussing the Parliament there and its assessment by his eyes there. What's your assessment of our Parliament, especially this 11th Parliament of 529 members of Parliament, and also the disbursement of money, the extravagance that we've seen in the last few days there? But let's switch gears and look at the national budget. The national budget for 2022-2023 is 48.1 trillion shillings there. And when we look at it, Honorable, put in perspective how we left sector-based budgeting to get to program-based budgeting there, and what does that mean? But of these 48.1 trillion shillings, 14 trillion only is set aside for development. The rest of it is expenses. So, Honorable, let me come to you. You sat on different committees in the 9th and the 10th there. And let's look at this budget there in the overview there. We left sector-based budgeting and came to program-based budgeting. What did that mean? And has that helped in your assessment, especially looking that it began with the 10th and came to the 11th? And also these 48.1 trillion shillings, really, we look like we're spending all of it, borrowing most of it domestically and also externally there. Your thoughts and oversight of this budget, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, to start with, the big chunk of this, thank you, to start with, a sizable chunk goes to loan repayment. This to start with. Two, that program, best I have issues with it. I'll give an example. UNRWA has unpaid certificates which have been accumulating of contractors. And they have not received money, I think now for 2 quarters for works done. But they have been receiving the recurrent expenditure. In other words, we have been paying them salaries, fuel, without money to do the real work. I had used to attend the district budget. They would pass a budget at times of 20 billion. They would tell you 16 is the recurrent expenditure, 4 billion is development. In other words, you would send 4 billion for development purposes, and you'd follow it up with 16 billion, which was not making a lot of sense. When you run away from the sector without dealing with the domestic areas, for areas like UNRWA, they will be affected because now they are running towards wanting to fund a program which might be falling outside a particular entity. It's only going to leave domestic areas. In my view, that was only possible if we are dealt with the domestic areas too. When you look at us as a country, we have what we call the Vision 2040. We have the National Development Plan. We're having strategic investment plan from where work plans and budgets have been drawn. So if you ignore a sector and you say you're going to base on a program, remember all these programs are derived now from the manifestos of politicians, in this case, the president. Sectors, most of these things we ignore, by the way. There are rationales behind them. Let me give an example. When we were in the 9th Parliament, we passed loans for renovation of regional referral hospitals, rehabilitation. The Honorable Professor Chiduma Kubuya, in supporting the loan for Kayunga, he asked that, yes, I appreciate, I support the loan. But how did we end there? To the extent that with our hospitals, you need a loan to rehabilitate them to the extent where you want them to be. This type of budgeting is going to cause a very big problem. I think we need to get back to the drawing board and look at priorities in every sector to start with. This program-based budgeting will mean that the mafias in the government will direct where resources go. Because when you look at the budget process in the country, it starts with the first call circular, which tells the accounting officers and their technical people to start preparing on what they want to appear in the budget, taking into account the National Development Plan, the strategic investment plan, so they can have a work plan and budget. Thereafter, a second call circular is issued, which clearly shows the resource envelope of every area and of every entity. That means that Minister of Finance or the executive will determine where they want money to go in the second call circular, because that's when the budget is closed. They will tell every sector and say, this is the money you have. I've found colleague ministers in the ministries which have been given a budget of 300 million per financial year. He has a vehicle, his budget is about fuel, and then a vehicle. I've seen many laboring to find the relevance by moving out in every district that they are on supervision, not guided by the technical people. So for me, I think this program-based budgeting, I know, for instance, that if you look at the budget, there's what we call budget support and project support. The donors before, they had preferred the project support. But project support had a limitation when it comes to auditing. They did not want to be audited. The memorandums they would sign would say, they don't audit those projects, yet it would be called government support. So these paradigm shifts in the government we have been seeing, there have been many. The program-based budgeting, it must be cascaded across the sector, because each entity or ministry to perform in its work plan, it has clearly sets out its goals. And the budget monitoring tool by the Office of the Prime Minister looks for particular performance indicators in every budget of every entity. So if you don't fund the critical, the core of the budget of the core of that particular sector, you are more or less telling us that these sectors are not important, that you can even merge them, reduce the number of members of parliament, or number of ministers, so that we don't have to waste a lot of resources. But the danger of the program-based budgeting, it must take into account staffing, because I've seen where it has been applied. In the last 2 quarters, where Minister of Finance has not released the money to certain sectors in terms of development budget, but they have released the recurrent, and they have continued paying salaries and allowances to those officers in those entities, which affects government and distorts the budgeting process. Thank you.
And I'm grateful you have talked about project-based budgeting, and you've also talked about sector budgeting, and then the program-based. I think we as citizens were interested in the program because when you look at human capital, we're looking at the Ministry of Education, we're looking at the Ministry of Health, and we're trying to link the two there, because the person we're looking at is the individual. How is the individual healthy but also educated? Then we also look at Ministry of Agriculture and Trade. When these goods are grown, maize is grown in a farm somewhere, the Ministry of Trade is there to find the market. Do you think this linkage would work, or this is already failing at arrival?
No, in my view, the linkage would work, because it's like a one-stop center, and that people would have information on how to benefit in this chain. The issue is not about the planning. The issue is the implementation. For instance, we have been talking about industrialization, because industrialization, it was one of the tools to lead us to the middle income. If you want to understand what I'm saying, for those doubting Thomases, you can go to the website of the Ministry of Finance, particularly the National Planning Authority, access the certificate of compliance, and you see that projects which would take us to the middle income are not funded when it comes to the budget. There is a very big mismatch between the talk of the president, like when he talked on the State of Nation address, vis-a-vis the budget. My understanding is that the president was supposed to contextualize the country the state of affairs and to tell us how we intend to move away from where we are to address the bottlenecks and how the budget had been prepared to deal with that on the budget day. That's how I understand. You see, where is the standard gauge rail? If we are talking about standard gauge rail, where the industrialization process, the aquaculture parks, as they had been talked about. When it comes to the industrial park, yes, they have been trying to move, but we want to see them put the amenities as promised and giving the necessary support to the manufacturers as it's supposed to be. But if we don't address those factors, the excitement won't be there. That's why my concern again comes with the implementation. It's one thing to talk about, it's one thing to plan, the budget and the release of money to ensure that there is implementation is another. We want to see money which has been allocated in areas where you see that it's purely nugatory expenditure, money channeled to sectors which are going to help the economic growth and will achieve the middle income status. I saw them trying to explain, the president saying something else, the Minister of Finance trying to explain, to come in and to somewhat window dress what the president had decided simply because we don't pay attention to detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwiru. You can be part of this conversation by dropping your messages there at your tweets on our spaces there. Drop your tweet there on any question. We have left the national budget at that because we have two more topics, but we'll spend time on one there so that we can be able to do that. Your messages will be dropped in, and in the last 5 minutes, Honorable Mwiru will be dealing with those questions there. Let's deal with one more subject. Honorable, industrial action seems to be the new normal in this country. If anyone wants anything done, they strike. Science teachers did, they got 300% of their salary emolument increase there. Arts teachers are on strike, and this is the second week, and the government has come out to threaten them. But as of this morning, after the threat is supposed to subside today, and the cows have been given a directive that if a teacher does not show up, they're removed from the payment of salaries there. But also other 9 bodies have come out to say, if the teachers are not dealt with, we are coming. I have seen public lecturers have also put out a notice to go on industrial action there. Is this the new normal, and how do we avoid this kind of thing with these discrepancies in salaries there, and how do we bring it to an even field for everyone to be paid?
Well, first, industrial actions are within the law. And to my recollection, the teachers signed collective bargaining agreements with the Minister of Public Service. And in one of the procedure is withdrawal of labor through the industrial actions. I don't find any problem with that, and I think there's no issue there because what they're doing is lawful. What I keep asking myself, though, is as to whether when the government doesn't honor its own undertaking, which is under the collective bargaining agreements and the negotiations they have entered with the teachers, whether the government can sustain. That's the first question. But there is one part which many people don't pay attention to. I happen to have chaired an investigation by Dr. Geno under primary education. Primary and secondary education, there are 2 reports of Dr. Geno. One of the issues under that was the early childhood nutrition programs, which were very critical in the education sector because government, there's even a full director in charge of early childhood program in the Ministry of Education. There's a director in charge of primary, director in charge of secondary. So the disparities I asked a question to the permanent secretary, acting permanent secretary then, that, do you have children? She told me she had. How many? She told me there were 3. I asked her how many of them studied in government schools. I asked how many of those children studied in government schools. To my utter shock, there was none. I asked the director in charge of primary school. He told me he had children. I asked him whether they were studying in government schools. He told me they don't study in government schools. So the debate taking place now about teachers, I need to contextualize it that it's about teachers who are in government or government-aided schools, not in the private sector. But in these schools where the teachers are complaining, it is where our children are, or the children of the downtrodden. Those who are issuing threats to teachers and those who are encouraging them, or who are backing them, their children are not in this sector. Maybe to remind the viewers and the listeners. 2, and most important, I had, during the COVID lockdown, there are children who are not affected. Those of these people who are issuing threats, their children were international schools. They continued studying on Zoom, and they are not affected. So when we talk about the education sector, the first question should be, who has interest in this sector? Because none of those talking take their children to those schools. So it is the downtrodden whom we are talking about. And this sector has suffered. Because if you look at the completion rate, P1 to P7, you realize that almost 68% don't complete P7. When you P1 to P7. So the question, as many of them fall off between P1 and P7, even the few who join from senior 1 to senior 6 are also now being affected by these strikes. So the question is this intended to affect the education system of the downtrodden so that they remain among the lumpen proletariat and they are led by the neocompradors who have been created by a favorable education system of the rich? That's one question. 2, when you talk about science, and nobody is saying that they should not enhance the salaries of science teachers. What we are saying, that these are all teachers. And this is discriminatory to think about science teacher and to leave out the arts teacher. Those who thought about the 300% increment, maybe they would have thought about 150% increment across the board. The argument that science teachers are few, it does not arise because it remains discrimination. I've seen the threats trying to be pushed through the throats of the union. I want to salute Baguma Filibert. You have lived with integrity. You have not betrayed your people. You have actually, I admire you. I admire the guts you have used because you have known, but there's nothing about you. It's about everybody. Because if we don't respect people who have entrusted us with power, whom we are representing, and we cut deals, then there would be a very big problem. So I want to salute the secretary and the team for speaking out of information and also for standing their ground so that they are not intimidated. Of course, the end result will be court. Of course, that will mean that the teachers may have to lose when they go to Mr. Museveni's courts, because the direction will be given. That's how our unfolding should be. But for purposes of educating our children, I think every right-thinking member of society should come up to support the teachers so that there's meaningful engagement. We are not saying that the teachers not teach, but the engagement must be meaningful not full of threats. So at least there's something tangible, which are at least the teachers can bank on. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwiru. Let's look at this even further. One of the threats coming out of there, minus the one of removing them from the salary review there by the cows there, and the directive coming from government. The one that has come from the president is that if anyone is not interested in the public service, leave it. So your view on that, and how would Alliance for National Transformation handle a situation like this moving forward to resolve it amicably, but also leave teachers with integrity and dignity?
Well, if ANT was in government and were confronted with such a situation, would call our technical team to review the budget. Look at areas of wastage and reallocate money to the teachers. That's how we would have approached. We will not be issuing threats. So to me, I think this is a pointer, because some of these teachers, whereas we are concerned about them, these are the same people who participate in rigging elections by the help of government to rig elections. And now that they are facing the same situation which we are telling them. So some of them laid their own bed. So I think I have to tell them the hard way. Because you see, but I've told the public out there that these chasing teachers, they're not interested in the education sector. Because for them, they don't take their children to those schools. They take them at different places. And it too may be, as ANT, would explore a policy of engagement on time, so that we don't wait for the last minute and then we say, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Because it doesn't make any sense. And because this is not the first time, we saw when it came to intern doctors, our government hospitals, in terms of staffing, many of them are below 30%. They are run on intern doctors. So when the Minister of Health was threatening the intern doctors, we knew they would not sustain whatever they were doing. That's why even if you find the same government officials seeking for medical attention in private hospitals, then you wonder what is that they are prepared for us in the public hospitals. That's how baffling it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable there. I'll continue to encourage you to drop your questions there on our spaces or on Zoom or any other platform there. I will be getting into those in a short while here in the last few minutes. But let's get into our last two topics here, and let's touch one very fast so that we can end up with the last one there. Honorable, these runaway prices. Fuel is now at 6,000 shillings. Last week, but one was in Gulu, and for about 3 days, most of the town did not have fuel there. Prices of an ordinary man's food, posho, has gone up. So now people are running away from red chicken because of the expenses of chachu and feed for these chickens there. How far can this go, and how far before the public decides to push back? And what can government do?
Well, you see, whenever we're in Parliament, it takes us to the contingency fund, in which this government refused to put a substantial amount of money. If government had money in the contingency, would create a buffer in most of these sectors, support our farmers, support the players. Government would come up with subsidies to ensure that actually, because I went to take fuel at Shell, and so a liter of fuel I bought it at 6,140,000 shillings. But we used to buy this liter at 3,500, but now it's almost doubling. The question would be, what is value for money? What I want to tell the viewers and listeners, that this government is not bothered. COVID must have taught you that even under COVID circumstances, as other countries were issuing out measures which would help to boost the economy, ours was unbothered. In my opinion, we need to increase production. How do we do it? If government refuses to subsidize people, let government pay off everybody whom government owes. So there's money in saturation, there's money in more activities. So that we create alternatives to some of these things. Other than that, I see a very big challenge, because with the increment in fuel, that means that staff will not be reporting to work, because the prices will go up, and at the end of the day, it will eat into their pay, because the employers are not willing to increase their pay due to these prices. I've seen Parliament, as the norm has been, for them increasing the cost of fuel, and they keep paying themselves arrears in that regard. What is laughable, though, about these fuel issues, that even when the prices go down, the price remains the same. That's how challenging it is. So in my view, we expect the government to come up with a measure. Notice these political statements they make. They need to come out clearly and tell us what is their plan. By merely keeping quiet and giving reasons, to me, it doesn't help. Government needs to come out clearly and address these matters, because everybody feels the pinch. That's why you realize that when the poor, or those the vulnerable complain, those for whom the poor pay, when the poor complain, those for whom the poor pay just increase and say, we are the fuel has gone up, please pay us more, the same fuel, or even more, but even change the price. So we need to see interventions of government the way other governments have done, by issuing subsidies to these sectors, so the sectors can survive and the prices can be maintained. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Let's get into our last one there. And the security situation in the region, Honorable, there. You were on both the 9th and the 10th there. You've also talked about the classified budget there. M23 taking over Bunagana there and closing off that border for the last week there, but also Congo coming out and pointing fingers to Rwanda for supporting and funding M23 there, but also Rwanda coming out and pointing fingers and saying, you know what, you're supporting the FDLR to be able to be the insurgents in this country, even after they did what they did with the genocide there. What's your thought of this conflict, and can this conflict result into a fully fledged civil war of the region? And also, what do you think about the East African standby force that is yet to be deployed of 7,000 troops?
Well, to me, three things are apparent here. The first is the deployment, the deployment of our army outside Uganda without parliamentary approval. That speaks volume. Two, and I think that needs to be, that has been the position now, that the army, the law only requires very exceptional circumstances where the president can deploy and brief parliament later. But even there, it also requires a number of days, I think within 60 days, within which he must address parliament. But now it has become casual. But even I think we shouldn't make a lot of noise about the army issue, because these days you find the army guarding every Tom, Dick, and Harry, even guarding their businesses. Some have shops there in Shikubo. There's an army officer guarding their business. So what do? It is now practice. Now, I think we shouldn't waste time there. The other issue, to me, I think it is the scramble for Congo. If it is about the economic aspect, the economic aspect that these operations which are there, they enable these people capture territories. We used to see the colonialists conquering and then colonizing us until a time when we asked for independence. To me, I think this must be expansion tendencies by these African governments which see minerals in the neighboring countries. The security component, which we have kept on hearing for a very long time, that there are, for instance, Rwandese, the Banyamulenge who are in Congo, who have always been wanting to organize and go back home. Those have remained a threat to Rwanda. And I think Rwanda copied the character of Uganda, of entering the territory of the neighboring countries, either under the guise of looking for those who are engaged in armed struggle to change the government. I think it is I see an expansion tendency coupled with the security situation. Because in as long as Rwanda as a country does not extend to Congo to look for those cold soldiers whom they claim want to attack Rwanda, because now it became fashionable that one country can evade another country, whether they have bilateral agreements or they don't. Stay in those territories and say we are in those territories to keep peace in our area. So I see it as a very challenging situation, and it's going to depend on how militarily a country is equipped to fight on. Like for instance, I was seeing the useless war in this one of Ukraine and Russia. I see people are dying, but you see expansion tendencies on control, on territory, and the entire world is affected because of that war. Similarly, what these African dictators lack is the military muscle. But otherwise, we would wake up one night when they have walked through Congo and say now they have taken over Congo and they have installed the leader they want. We have seen these expansionist tendencies in the area, and in other areas that they have not paid back. You know very well that our colleagues in Rwanda, brothers and sisters, fought alongside the UP. It was NRA to capture Uganda under the arrangement that they were ready for them to go and take over Rwanda. They are from Rwanda. There was expansion tendencies in Congo. We have seen them tried in Sudan. So the warmongering has taken place. There's a guise of security, but also there is an aspect of the economic war. Because wherever they take charge, you have looked at the papers when they are saying Uganda is among the leading exporters of gold on the international scene. But there are big disparities between the gold which is mined in Uganda and the gold which is sold under the guise of Uganda selling, meaning that the source must be DRC. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwiru. And when we look at the chairperson, President Kenyatta, they are calling his colleagues on Monday, and they have a sitting there to have an immediate standby force go to DRC, and the threat being put out there to be able to tell them, you know what, you either surrender or we come for you. But also the communique that came through from the meeting of the heads of states said, one, there needs to be a ceasefire. Two, they need to be able to put down their weapons. The question is, if Rwanda is funding this war and we're going into there, will Rwanda be part of it? Will it not be part of it? And under what legal framework are we putting this army there?
Well, I have answered that there is no legal framework, because the legal framework I know of, it requires Parliament must authorize. That's the starting point. But deployment, where the president deploys and informs Parliament, that is where there is very exceptional circumstances that the sovereignty of the country will threaten. Those are the circumstances. Two, When it comes to President Kenyatta, for him, he will have done his part as the chair, that he does the opposite. He does what is expected of him. And I know his, his colleagues who are interested in the affairs of DRC, they will keep on jumping out. These forums of this nature, they are not very easy because decisions are taken by consensus. They're taken by consensus, and they normally pay a lot of attention to detail, and they normally to move along with their colleagues. So we want to see whether there is a joint team which takes place where Uganda, the president will seek permission from parliament for the deployment when following the law, or he will do it his way as he wishes. But by and large, whatever he wants, it will come to pass, whatever they want. Because if this is an economic war, and the M23 and the FDR is just used as a camouflage, for purpose of encroaching on the territory of DRC, our only concern as the Wananchi is that when there is a problem in terms of payment, the way it were, because there's a judgment against Uganda and the taxpayer to pay, but the individuals benefited. How this benefits us? That's what the challenge is. Thank you.
Honorable, my last two questions, especially on this state. If we went to chase ADF in Congo, and then we're hearing of ADF in Mwiru, and we're hearing of ADF in Mitiana and Bulova yesterday, who are we still chasing the other side? Is there someone masquerading as ADF? And who is this one who is in our country there? Should we have spent the billions of shillings of spent there chasing ADF that seems to be here?
Well, my worry is these formations, because they were telling us, you see, like I don't want to go through the stories of Mwiru, of ADF in Mwiru, because I had the spokesperson of the UPDF gambling that actually the person who was leading that group is the other guy who tried to detonate a bomb at CPS, who was hit by the bomb, and he was arrested, he was given asylum, and then he was the commander of the same outfit. So it would defeat logic. So, but the fact that these formations are taking place, maybe they are intended to support supplementary expenditures which are in the offing. Because at least as a country, they can't blame us for anything. Because whenever they have wanted money for security, they have taken it either with or without our will. They have pushed it through parliament and they have had it. So in my view, I see those formations only as intended to create fear and create budgets, allocations in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mwiru there. And this is the time we give you to be able to ask questions there. If you have a question and you're in our spaces there, just raise your hand there. We'll be able to get you and ask your question to Honorable Paul Mwiru there. And if there are any other questions on any other platforms, they'll be dropped on this platform for us to be able to see them there. I see Julius, Morris, Rujumba there, and I want to thank you for sticking it out there, Joshua. Thank you very much for sticking it out there. I see Roots there, who is also a champion of the environment there. Any questions now would be welcome, so that we can be able to ask Honorable before we even give him a rest there. As the questions come in, we have about 11 minutes to be able to close this space. I see a question that has come through. Julius, if you could just get to your handle there and send us a question, or just say it out so that we can be able to. We're listening to you, Julius. Julius Seguia, you could ask your question now. Okay, as Julius is getting his technical issues sorted there, Let me put the last one to you. Something that has come out today and really has got us questioning some of the things that are happening. Today, a class 1 communication came through from the deputy commander of the defense forces there, Charles Elwelu there, putting out a communique telling all soldiers to stay at their positions and all weapons and equipment to be held wherever it is. Have you ever heard of such a communication coming out, especially to put all soldiers and equipment in this country on hold? And for what purpose do you think this is happening? I see, okay. Julius, you can ask your question. Julius Seguia, yes. You, please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Timothy. Thank you so much, Honorable Mwiru. Thank you for this space. I have just a simple question. Since we are from different formations seeking to bring about change in Uganda, I'd like to ask Honorable Mwiru, and okay, I'd like to ask Honorable Mwiru. My question is, what can we do to attain a peaceful transition of power in our country? And thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Thank you so much for this question. Actually, we have to keep on engaging, like there are efforts to create a joint action team of all the political players, to the extent that even when we have disagreements as political players, we have a bare minimum. There are things we must keep on operating, like the human rights issues. They don't question which political organization you belong to. So we are trying to work out a way that we shall have a joint action team to keep on pressing for pushing so that the political space is widened, because we see it keeps on shrinking, and the people we are engaging with, they have the guns, they have everything. What we only have is our mouth. What we have to do is to engage until we create a critical mass and people get out of fear and realize that they need to live in a peaceful country where they must have a say. In summary, I'm saying, Julius and others out there, don't wait for the process to end. Become part of the process so that you know what are you engaging in. It is very critical. That's what you have to keep on doing. Keep on engaging people. Because when you move out there, many want to be part of the change, but they want to become part of the process causing the change. They want to go into survival mode. You must keep on overcoming fear for now. I thank you.
There, I have a gentleman called Roots Tumsime Christian there. Please ask your question. Christian, if you could ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Timothy. Mine is very short. I have only 2 questions. One is about the main election. Now received a notice that the Electoral Commission does not have money. Now they have money for now. I don't know how our
Thank you very much, Christian there. Honorable, you please respond to that question.
In the first one, I knew before that they would call off these elections. Someone informed me that NRM was not prepared to participate in them. Like 2 weeks back, someone informed me that those elections would be called off because actually I met someone. I consulted someone. I was prepared to go for those elections in my area. Then they told me, no, don't waste your time. They're going to be called off. But having said that, the NRM, of course, has been using the state organs, the GISO, the DISO, to get a situational report. And if they allow them to go, they're going to lose almost all of them. So that's what they have to fear. They requested for more time to organize, have resources. They are waiting for the budget, by the way. After the release of this first quarter, government will have to hold those elections when they have received the money. Because if they went into these elections now, when NRM has no money to give to people, they would have lost all of them. So they have to postpone them. I think they will be conducted either late September or early September. After NRM government is releasing money to entities and them combing it from entities and use it for purpose of those elections. That one I knew from the word go. About fundraising, yes, the NT is a new party. It doesn't have funds, but we're doing whatever is humanly possible to ensure that we do fundraising. We have been engaging into training our people on the method and modes of fundraising. So we are working on this, and very soon we are going to come up with a fundraising program. We're going to come up with our work plan, the budget, and we start fundraising money to meet our intended activities. So we're on the course, we're on the move to ensure that we raise money. Please encourage whoever is out there that there is nobody out there out of the country who's thinking about you. It's about yourself, and you must fund your own part activities. Thank you.
One more question, if there is any, both on the spaces or on any other platform there for Honorable Mwiru there. It can cut across from the budget, it can come to the industrial actions there, and we can be able to have some of those questions there. I see Mr. Godwin Muhumza, thank you for joining us here. Honorable, we have about a minute there, so I'll give you this 1 minute to be able to give your closing remarks so that we can call it an evening. We just have a minute to close there. Hold on, Honorable, I have one here. I have Hamza Yassin. Hamza Yassin, if you could please ask your question. Hamza Yassin is on our spaces there. Please ask your question so that you can be our last person there. Yes, we can get you, Hamza.
And I am part in organizations, and I personally appreciate or believe in this process too. Now, about I mentioned about the fact that people have to learn that it's injust to have to back these parties, because all of a sudden the party becomes answerable to the people if it's the people who fund it. But in situations where we have at the moment where it's the government that funds parties, these parties feel like they are not answerable to the people. So I feel like we should continually push this message to encourage people to fund their political parties. And that is very important, because in any case, they it's my responsibility to ensure that they run in a manner that represents me as an individual. So in light of that, I live in the US. I have tried on the ANT website several times to try to contribute, but there is something wrong with the website when it comes to payment with credit cards and debit cards. So this is maybe something you have to look at because it hasn't worked for me on several occasions. But all in all, continue with the good work. Some of us are, I have never followed any party in Uganda, but I am definitely a ANC person. Thank you and have a good and wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, Yassine Hamza there. And Honorable Mwiru will respond to
Yes.
that and also give his closing remarks.
Well, Hamza has made my day. You know, our people believe in quick fixes. They seem to be the preoccupation of everybody. And my closing remarks is that we have no option. We have to get involved. Because if you don't want to get involved in the process and you want to become part of the outcome, don't complain when things go wrong. Because you refuse to be part of the process and you joined whatever was available. As Alliance for National Transformation, we put people first. I know many have been wondering, I was asking, but where is your party? We don't see you. You're not moving on a very tight speed like any other. The answer is simple. We are looking for people who think like us, people who believe in processes. We mobilize them. We create that critical mass. Once the public or the public out there trust us as the right people of integrity, people who mean what we say, we implement what we talk, there will be a paradigm shift from where those people have been, because many are interested in quick fixes. And once they realize that ours is the vehicle to deliver them where they have already longed to go, they will join us and they will not leave. So I want to thank you for having listened to us. We need to kill fear before fear kills us. The country seems to have gone the survival mode. It's the responsibility of everybody to get out the survival mode. And we think about our country, we think about ourselves, think about the country. I thank you so much. May God bless you.
I want to thank Honorable Paul Mwiru for coming through to have this conversation with us. But also it's been a very positive and enlightening conversation there. We have covered a range of topics to be able to discuss here and also enlighten you on what the position for Alliance for National Transformation is there. Hamza Yassine, who was asked a very pertinent question, I hope you can be able to get back to the website and drop your question or comments there and ask for directions on how you can be able to be part of this difference there. Julius Seguia, thank you. I also want to thank Christian Tsime there also for coming through. I want to thank Kiza. He came through earlier on. Kiza Oscar there. Thank you very much. Hamza, I already thanked you there. Mugisha Stanley, thank you for coming through. Rujumba Joshua, thank you for coming through. There was a lady called Joanne, thank you very much for coming through. We'll have these conversations periodically and we'll be notifying you of them. My name is Timothy Nyangweso and thank you very much for joining us in this conversation with Honorable Mwiru. Have a good evening and have a fabulous weekend. God bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, Timothy. Good job, Timothy. Timothy, how are you?
I am well. I'm well, Sylvian. How are you?
Good job. And you manage Twitter Spaces very well. So we are not going to fear anymore. Congrats.
Yeah. And Twitter Spaces was really doing well. So we are really happy about that.
Well.
Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I appreciate the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really, really deep.
Thank you, Sylvain.
Yeah, so we leave you for now, but kindly send in your feedback or your feelings on how best we can improve this one from the moderator's perspective. We are trying a technical application where we can do the, where we can do the control of Twitter Spaces from the back end. And so we do not allow, so we just help you to just make sure that you're on one gadget, because sometimes the element of muting and unmuting can be nagging and sometimes people forget. But we hope we shall have cracked that within about a month to come.
No problem, no problem. It's just you need to keep in touch with both gadgets, even as you continue to speak there, both on Twitter Spaces and Zoom there.
Yeah, I know it's a big challenge. I hope you have stopped the Twitter Spaces on your side. Have you?
Yes, the Twitter Spaces have stopped.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a big challenge, but I remember Worship Harvest, not Worship Harvest, Inspired Leadership tried to do that. And they succeeded. So I'm intentionally going to use this coming month, July. If it requires me being at their feet to study how they managed it, I don't care where they will be. We need to do that, because if somebody is managing only one gadget, it becomes a lot more convenient, and and then body language rhymes with the message itself. But here there is a bit of a challenge where, because of running two gadgets, somehow you don't get the actual gist of the message when the body language is sort of mismatched, because he's looking at two gadgets running at the same time.
Let's see how we do it, but I'm available and I'm grateful that the spaces worked. And I think this whole thing of, I think I've learned about the spaces and it can be done well. We just need to be able to push more traction, I think, a day before, so that we are having the link going out to people earlier so that they can be able to know about this. Maybe two messages on a Thursday and a Friday before it happens, so that we are having, we're building that critical mass.
Very true. There's also a possibility of actually setting it up and leaving it timed without necessarily setting it up immediately. So you can set it up a few days before, give it a time and share the link, and people know. And then you wait for that particular time to come and tap on the link and start the conversation.
No problem, no problem.
Great. Bless you, man.
Thank you. Bless you too.
Bye.
Yes, Alpha. Are you on a taxi?